Hello, colleagues. Welcome to our side event at the 57th United Nations Statistical Commission session this year. We are very happy to present you this side event called Human Development in the Age of Artificial Intelligence, Indices and Global Insights from New Data. My name is Yanchun Zhang. I'm Chief Statistician of United Nations Development Program, and today my team from Human Development Report Office will present you the Human Development Indices, but also new data featured in our latest Human Development Report. Today's session is 90 minutes, so you will be with us from 9 to 10:30. We have planned a very, very full session for you because we have a lot to share what we have been doing since last we met in March 2025. For those of you who have been our session in the past, you know this is the side event we organize every year since 2011. So for 15 years, we have been meeting old friends, new friends in this occasion, presenting the human development reports and human development indices. And UNDP is required to report to the United Nations Statistical Commission periodically on our human development data and statistics. So we take this side event as an opportunity to inform the new delegates to the United Nations Statistical Commission, but also update our old friends on what's happening in our research front and statistical front. Next slide, please. So today's presentation, we have 4 presentations today. So first, Yuqi Xu, our policy specialist on research and statistics, will give an overview of the 6 human development indices and data published in our reports and some derivative statistics we also publish online. Then Heriberto Tapia, Research and Strategic Partner Advisor, will present our latest human development report focusing on artificial intelligence. Then Kimonding and Nick will jointly present an innovative data platform, Human Climate Horizons. This platform was launched a couple years ago, but we also continue to update it with new features and new data presented. So this year we are going to look at how climate hazards affect agriculture yields. Then last, my colleague Malika will present the 2025 Global Multidimensional Poverty Index. Then this report also focuses on climate hazards. So without further ado, I will give the floor to my colleagues, Yuqi. Yuqi, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, no matter you're in New York or connecting from elsewhere around the world. My name is Yuqi Xu. I'm a policy specialist from UNDP Human Development Report Office. So for today, I'm going to open the session by presenting our team's latest work on human development indexes and data. Due to the time available, I'll provide a concise overview of the composite indexes, and then I'll briefly introduce the new data development we are advancing. The very first Human Development Report in 1990 started with one simple idea. People are the real wealth of nations. It reminds us that real progress is not just measured in the number of GDP, it's about people, their choices, their opportunities, their freedom to live the life they value. The Human Development Index was created as a practical expression of this idea. The HDI is a simple measure of progress that goes beyond income, inspired by the Nobel laureate Professor Amartya Sen's capability approach. Since 1990, our Human Development Report Office has produced a total of 30 human development reports so far, with our latest report released in May last year. In each edition of the Global Human Development Report, A new update of the Human Development Indexes, including the HDI, will be calculated and published for countries to track their progress in advancing human development. As the first report emphasized, human development is multidimensional. It's for individuals to have choices and freedom to be healthy, to be knowledgeable, and to enjoy a decent standard of living. So the HDI was introduced as a multidimensional index to track a basic set of capabilities along the three basic human development dimensions. The HDI was developed to steer the discussion on development progress away from the GDP and towards a measure of human progress, a measure that truly counts in people's life. For the past 3 decades, the HDI showed a consistent progress in development progress. However, the latest data from our 2025 report show that this progress is decelerating at an alarming rate, and this same trend is observed globally and across regions. The HDI relies on data from UNDESA, UNESCO, World Bank, IMF, and other UN data for its 4 main components. The first health dimension uses this indicator, life expectancy at birth. The second education dimension is measured by 2 indicators. First, expected years of schooling. Second, mean years of schooling. The third dimension on standard of living is captured by this component, gross national income, GNI per capita. In the past 36 years, new and additional indexes have been developed and added to the report to complement the HDI. As we know, HDI only captures part of the story, but not all of it. Currently, we have a more comprehensive set of 5 additional composite indexes to also capture other key dimensions, including gender, inequality, poverty, and planetary pressures. These indexes are part of our regular production of human development indexes. They are published in the statistical annex in each global human development report. So now I'm going to give you a brief overview of these indexes so you can understand better what they measure. Currently, we have 2 indexes to capture broadly inequality in human development. The first index is this Inequality Adjusted HDI, IHDI. The second index is this Planetary Pressure Adjusted HDI, PHDI. Both indexes are designed to capture inequality. One is used for intragenerational inequality, and the other reflect the concern for intergenerational inequality. So as its name suggests, IHDI is designed to measure the loss in human development due to inequality in the 3 HDI dimensions. So the IHDI accounts for inequality in the 3 HDI dimension by discounting each dimension's average value according to its level of inequality. Therefore, IHDI equals HDI when there's no inequality across people, but its value falls below HDI when inequality increases. For the data used here, inequality in each dimension is estimated from microdata. First, inequality in life expectancy uses data from a life table. The main data source is from UNDESA. Second, inequality in education uses data on years of schooling and estimated from different household survey data. Lastly, inequality in income. Now we use this data UNU-wider World Income Inequality Database. Notice for this index, we do not rank countries. What's more informative is to look at the difference, or we say the loss from HDI after the inequality adjustment. For example, from the 2025 report, when the HDI is adjusted for inequalities, the overall loss in HDI was 22% globally. This PHDI is a new index that was first introduced in the 2020 Human Development Report. So the PHDI discounts the HDI for the excessive human pressure on the planet. So this index is computed as the product of HDI and one adjustment factor, which is calculated as 1 minus index of planetary pressures. Therefore, in an ideal scenario, when there's no pressure on the planet, PHDI equals HDI, but its value falls below HDI when the pressure increases. For the data used here, in addition to the data used for calculation of HDI, PHDI also used data on CO2 emission and material footprint per capita. Similarly as the IHDI, here again, we're looking at the difference, or we say the loss from HDI after the adjustment for planetary pressures. Here in this figure, you see PHDI value is very close to HDI value for low and medium human development countries. The gap between these two start to widen up for high and very high human developed countries. For very high human developed countries, there's a wide divergence in the PHDI value. Out of the 62 very high human developed countries, only 7 remain in the same very high category after the adjustment for planetary pressures. So what can this PHDI help us? This index is used to guide the convergence of countries toward the top right corner, where they should be able to maintain very high level of human development while without imposing pressure on the planet. Moreover, we have this global multidimensional poverty index. In the following session, my colleague will share more details on the MPI methodology and the result from our latest 2025 global MPI report. Among our composite indexes, gender has been a key area of work. In fact, Human Development Report is the first to introduce a set of gender indexes for countries to track their performance in gender equality and women's empowerment since the 1995 Human Development Report. Currently, we have 3 gender indexes that could be used to tackle issues in 3 major areas. First, well-being. Second, empowerment. And lastly, social norm. The first 2 indexes, GDI and GII, are part of our regular production of human developed composite indexes. These 2 are published in each global human development report. The Gender Social Norm Index is a new index that we introduced in recent years and is published periodically in a separate publication. The GDI is designed to measure the difference in human development achievement between women and men in the 3 basic human development dimensions. So this index has the same dimensions, same indicators, and uses the same data sources as the HDI. This GDI is a direct measure of gender gap in the HDI. It's calculated as the ratio of female HDI to male HDI. So we know GDI 1 represents gender parity, and the closer the GDI is to 1, the smaller the gender gap. Moreover, for this index, again, we do not rank countries. Instead, countries are grouped into 5 GDI groups by the absolute deviation from gender parity. Therefore, GDI group 1 countries have the smallest gender gap, and countries in Group 1 performed the best. The GII is designed to measure gender inequalities empowerment. It shows the loss in potential human development due to inequalities between female and male achievement across these three major dimensions. This index has been widely used since first introduced in 2010. It's a very popular index for tracking countries' performance in women's empowerment. The GII first innovative introduced this reproductive health dimension with two components, maternal mortality ratio and adolescent birth rate. So this dimension represents the freedom to control own life and the autonomy of body. Second, for empowerment, includes two indicators, parliamentary representation and population with at least some secondary education. So this dimension focuses on political and educational empowerment. Lastly, it includes labor force participation rate as the third dimension, which represents the equal access to opportunity and resources. So as we have observed in recent report, based on our GII, its global average has continued to drop in the past 3 decades, which indicate continued progress in reducing gender inequality. However, as you can see here, this trend has been slowing in recent years. Moreover, we also find that the advancement in closing gender gap in education is not necessarily translated into closing gender gap in economic empowerment. Based on the latest GDI data, in 66 countries, adult women are more educated than men, but in the same countries, women still earn less than men. The income gender gap on average is still around 38%. So while we see some progress in women's basic capabilities, there are still challenges in areas that involve greater agency and power. Behind this, we find social norm could be the key to understand the dynamics. This Gender Social Norm Index was first introduced in the 2019 Human Development Report. The GSNI highlights the critical role of entrenched gender social norm in perpetuating gender disparities. So this GSNI quantify bias against women and capture people's attitudes on women's role along these 4 key dimensions: political, educational, economic, and physical integrity. It's based on this World Value Survey data with 7 indicators that are derived from the survey responses. So the final index ranges between 0 to 1, and we know the higher the GSNI value means a higher level of bias against women. Lastly, I would like to touch briefly on our consultation process. First, transparency is central to how we work. We maintain an open and ongoing dialogue with national statistical offices. As you know, HDRO does not collect data directly from countries. We rely on the data produced and harmonized by international organizations. So this makes close coordination with NSO essential to ensure that we're using the most up-to-date value for the calculation of indexes in each report. So each year, our office will send an annual letter to NSO outlining our production timeline, and importantly, included in this letter is the data cutoff date. And we're going to send out this letter soon. Also, we share the main data source uses for compilation of our human developed indexes. And we invite NSO to review this information and flag any discrepancy with the relevant international agencies. Second, Consultation continue throughout the years. Each year, we host this annual site event at the UN Statistical Commission. And we organize several regional and thematic consultation as a part of the broader Human Development Report process every year. Lastly, we regularly engage and consult with our statistical advisory panel. This is to ensure strong technical guidance and methodological rigors. So you're welcome to visit our website or follow our social media to learn more about our indexes and data. If you have any further question or would like to connect, please contact us at hdr.undp.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yuqi. As Yuqi mentioned, for our 2026 Human Development Report, we are going to send out this letter to all the NSOs very soon. Then this is a critical letter. We will announce the data cutoff dates and the data sources of the indicator data for the computation of our human development indices in the 26th report. Now, if you are new focal point of your NSOs on our human development data and statistics, please feel free to reach out to us. We will put our contact email in the chat so that you can share with us your email address so that we make sure the NSO letter arrives at your mailbox. Second thing, just to emphasize, every year when we publish the report, update the data, we update the full-time series to facilitate your comparison of human development data and statistics over time. So this is very important. Over the years, we have been making our best efforts to expand the country coverage of human development indices as well, as you probably can see. And last, during the session today, please feel free to use the Q&A window to submit your questions. Then we will answer them as they come in. Thank you very much. Now we move to the second presenter, Harry Burton. Harry, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Yanchun. It's my pleasure to be here. Greetings to all the colleagues that are connected. So I'm Heriberto Tapia. I lead the research team in HDRO. So I'm going to be telling you about our latest report with a particular emphasis on the implications for data. So I'm sharing my screen with this timer. Okay. So our report in 2025 was about artificial intelligence. The title, very important, A Matter of Choice, People and Possibilities in the Age of AI. So in this report, we try to analyze what was going on with artificial intelligence in respect to human development, but something very important that we were not trying to predict what is expected to happen. We were rather assessing the trends that we already see and also to give a sense of the possibilities for us to take advantage of this new context. Something important is that this is not a report about the technology. This is a report about people in this new context, and in particular, how we can expand the human development, the fundamental freedoms of people to live a life that they value, and again, how we can support their choices. Now, this report comes in a very special moment, and Yuchi was already showing you this chart, which is at some sort of turning point when it comes to development. So development that used to be working in a certain way, we were never very happy with the progress in human development. We always wanted to be stronger. But now, after the pandemic, after some recovery, we see that we are converging towards a trend that is significantly slower. And this is very worrisome because it challenges all the prospects for progress of people, in particular in poorer countries. Another element that we observe in the data is that since the pandemic, the inequalities between countries have been increasing. Again, over the last few decades before the pandemic, we were always highlighting the inequalities between countries, but those were important, but at least decreasing. Now, for 4 years in a row, we are documenting an increase in inequalities between countries, in part because some countries, in particular poorer countries, have failed to fully recover from the pandemic, and also in part because there are emerging inequalities and divergences in human development. So this is the context. And in order to position our report, we decided to implement a survey about the expectations of people around artificial intelligence. So this was an innovation in the production of our report. So we conducted this survey in last year in 21 countries, representing around 60% of the population, following the industry standards. And this gives us the opportunity to not to speculate about how people are perceiving artificial intelligence, but rather to listen to their voices. So I'm going to be presenting some of the results in connection with some of the points that we explore in the Human Development Report. So one of the so before continuing, so you can actually access all the results of the survey in our webpage. Here you have also a QR code that can give you an easier way to access to the data. Also, we have the link. I understand my colleagues are also placing the link in the chat. All the data, including the macro data and also the documentations, could be found in this place. So I think this is still a resource that could be further exploited from your perspective. So I encourage that if you are interested in knowing what are the trends, or if you have particular questions that you would like to test with this data, to go to this website. So what we're finding in terms of the people's expectation. So first, that people were already quite connected with artificial intelligence. So we document that around 1/5 of the population globally were already using artificial intelligence for human development. For us, this embeds the use for education, for work, and for access to health services. So it was a respectable number, relatively similar across different country groups. We classify countries in low and medium, one group high and very high. But what's very interesting to see in this survey is that when we ask whether you expect to use artificial intelligence for human development over the next year, this number was very, very big across all groups. So, and what was also very important, this number was even bigger for the less developed countries. So you can see there that around 66% of the population in the developing countries expect to be using AI for human development over the course of 1 year, vis-a-vis 46% in the more developed countries. So this is telling us that people are already using artificial intelligence a lot, but also they are already embracing the idea of having artificial intelligence as an important part of their life. So this is important because it's not a question about whether you should use or not artificial intelligence, because people are already using it. People are already looking forward to it with a very nuanced view. Now, In the conceptualization of artificial intelligence, we stress that this is not just another wave of innovation. So artificial intelligence doesn't fit neatly under the category of a digital tool in the sense that a tool is predictable. We know what it's going to be doing. Also, we understand uh, the how to use it, so it's transparent. Also, it's static. We use it, and also and therefore it has a rather passive role in our lives. So we are the ones using the tool. In the case of artificial intelligence, uh, we have that it's not very predictable. So there is a lot of uncertainty about what it would do. It's very opaque. It's very difficult to interpret. It's dynamic. It evolves over time. So certain things that we behave in a certain way today might behave in a completely different way tomorrow. And also it's active. So it doesn't need us to start doing things. It can act in many aspects autonomously. So it's a very big distinction, and this has very implications. One very important, it's about the perception of human agency, so the ability of people to control their own lives. And we ask people about what is their level of agency now and what is the expected agency in the future. And we could see that in general, in developing countries, there isn't much of a difference. However, in the more developed countries, people are already starting to see that uh, the power of artificial intelligence might crowd out their own agency, and this is something that is important to keep in mind as part of the development agenda. In the report, we also document that this is not a given. So in this chart, we can see how we have the agenticity of models in the horizontal agency and the horizontal axis and the human agency in the vertical axis. So it is perfectly possible to be in the upper side or on the lower side of the graph. And here we have different examples of the type of technologies that fall into these categories. So it's very important that we are conscious about this so we can try to produce technologies that are rather in the upper side of the chart and avoid the cases of the lower part of the chart. Another element that is very important is that this technology is not neutral. It affects the distribution of power through different channels, and one of them has to do with the cultural elements. So we document in the report that precisely, for instance, ChatGPT, its behavior is way more correlated to the values of the countries in the very high category and way less correlated with the values of people of people in countries of low human development index. So this is important to consider because it's a sort of hidden mechanism through which power is being distributed. And now in our survey, we see that people are already understanding that this is the case. So very few people say that, for instance, in terms of language, that large language models always are aligned with their own language. Uh, if we take into account always and most of the time, is still um, less than 30%. But also, only around a quarter of people don't feel that they are not well reflected in or their language elements are not well reflected in this model. So actually, in a very large percentage of the population, they already see that sometimes this works very well and sometimes it doesn't. Another very important element that we highlight in the report among the challenges is the fact of new technologies, and in particular artificial intelligence on the mental health of the young people. So in this chart, we see the average mental health uh, quotient score that is a proxy for mental health that um, has a monotonic increasing trend. So, and this is a big shift with respect to what used to be measured. This curve used to have the shape of a U. So younger people used to score in this index way higher. But now we are seeing that and this is something that appears some sort of regularity as we measure this in different ways, that the situation of young people has deteriorated in this shift downward. Now, this has different causes. So it's not only about the use of technology, but in the report we document that actually the use of technology has an effect. And here in these two charts, you see how precisely the behavior of this mental health indicator depends greatly. Well, first on gender, so it's worse in the case of women, and second depends on for how long uh, these young people have been exposed to the use of smartphones in particular. So this is a very concerning point that has to be considered, and also very important. It's something that we need to keep tracking. So from the perspective of data, this is a very salient point to be considered in the future. Another point is about, in the report, we explore how to understand what is happening with people in the labor market. So the usual conceptualization was that technology will help us to do routine tasks, manual and cognitive, and then humans will remain doing the non-routine task. But the problem is that more and more, the technology has been able to occupy the space of what we in the past we consider non-routine tasks. So the boundary is being shifted, and therefore the space for humans somehow, if we keep using this framework, is being reduced. I would say even cornered. So in the report, so this is what we see, the expansion of the technologies also for non-written tasks. So in the report, we make the point that it's very important to go beyond this. So, and that we can open the space for tasks that are where it's very important the presence of humans, either because they are intrinsically human, and there are many that fall into these categories, for instance, care work, but also, but on the other hand, those that are very important they can have many very, very significant effects on our lives. So in that case, it's essential that people remain in control, remain completely in the loop. So this is precisely what we have in this chart. So we think that there is a space for, of course, for automation, but it's essential that when the stakes are high, or where there is a wide range of application, humans remain in control. So this is an important message of our report. Now, in terms of the opportunities, we stress that we are in a completely different moment for innovation. And in many cases, the advances of artificial intelligence are really moving the frontier of what humans can do with respect to innovation. So here a very interesting example is what happened with the game Go. At some point, a few years ago, the computers, AlphaGo, were able to defeat the best players of Go in the world. But this chart shows what happened since that moment with the ability of human players. And you can see how, after that moment, the ability of human players significantly increased. So this gives us a sense that even when artificial intelligence eventually can support our world and you can say do things better than us, we can get empowered to move beyond our previous boundaries. So this is a very important message. Now, what does it mean, for instance, this message for statistics? So one of the things that we are experimenting with is precisely the use of artificial intelligence to capture statistics around the world. And this is part of a paper that actually we published earlier this week. So where we can go on the estimation of a human development index from country level, less than 200, to every province in the world. This is using satellite data and artificial intelligence to every municipality in the world and also to every grid in the world. So this is the possibility to move beyond what we have been doing. And this is not to replace what we have been doing, but also to complement. And it's very important. And this is part of our research agenda in this area, to engage with statistical authorities in different countries so we can validate the results and look for better uses of these technologies. When it comes to jobs, actually, and this is a result from the survey, we asked people whether they expect that whether technology would automate their jobs or whether it would augment their opportunities in the labor market. And these are results grouped by different occupation across the 21 countries where we apply the survey. So, and you can see that overall, the perception or the expectation of automation are fairly high, around 50%. But the expectation of augmentation are even higher, on average around 60%. And when we see the connection, we see that in occupation by occupation, in general, the picture is that people expect higher augmentation than automation. And this is what we find in this triangle under the 45-degree line. So this is an important message because for people, they're already understanding that it is not one or the other. So people understand that in the labor market, they are going to be facing automation, but at the same time, they expect that there would be a space for augmentation. This means, for instance, that they are going to be able to find jobs that might not even exist today. So this is a little bit of how people are thinking about this, and it's a big that gives with a big burden of responsibility on policymakers to make sure that augmentation actually happens. So I'm gonna be closing now. So in this report, we have three main messages in terms of what to do. So the first message is about the need of building a complementarity economy. So in many cases, we are some actors are thinking about improving some models of artificial intelligence by benchmarking how this model can do things better than people. We think that that is wrong. What we need is to start measuring how artificial intelligence and people can work better and better together. And this is something that is very important for policies because it is essential to avoid the short-term temptation of trying to automatize certain tasks without very big gains in terms of productivity. So this is what Acemoglu calls so-so AI technology. So there is a benefit that happens in the short term, but it's something that doesn't give us what we want in the long term. The second point is about innovation with intent. So this means the ability to try to produce the technological changes that work for people, but at the same time, unleash the new opportunities that are emerging in different areas. So here, it's essential that, for instance, the technologies open new opportunities, not only in terms of the creation of the new language models. It's also, we see that this technology has a great potential for adaptation in different countries, and these decisions are being made in many developing countries right now. And the third part is about investing in the capabilities that count. So it is essential to take a look at what's happening in our educational system and our health systems in the light of the new development. In the educational system, it is essential to move from just measuring quantities to the quality of education, but not only any quality. It's essential that this quality has to do with creative thinking, relational thinking, and this type of abilities that enable students to assess critically what is happening. And also we document many examples of how new technologies can be adopted in the health system. So I'm going to stop here. We'll be very happy to answer questions and also keep this dialogue because this is something that will continue with us. But we hope that this framework will help us to make progress because this is not about the technology. This is about people. Over to you, Jenchun.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Harry. We already had some questions and these questions answered in the Q&A. Then my colleague also posted the link to the 2025 Human Development Report and 2025 AI Survey and Human Development in the chat box. So please feel free to look for more detailed data using these links. Then if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to our office as well. As Harry mentioned, this is the very first effort by the office to conduct a global survey to complement the research done in our report. That it covers 21 countries, 36 languages, and represent almost 33% of the global population. So please take a look. Next, we are moving to the presentation on Human Climate Horizon Data Platform. This is a presentation jointly made by Nicholas Debsky, our research analyst, and Kimundi Sabaun, our data management specialist. The floor is yours.
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Kimundi Sabaun, working with the Human Development Report Office as a data management specialist. I'll give you a brief overview about the HCS platform, and then my colleague Nicholas Debsky will present the new release on HCH, which is on agricultural yield impacts. So Human Climate Horizons, or HCH, is a free and open digital platform, which is public, developed as a partnership between UNDP Human Development Report Office and the Climate Impact Lab. As you can see on the screen, you can scan the QR code to visit the platform or visit the link provided, where you will find all the information on HCH and useful interactive visualizations, as well as data exploration in download section. What makes the HCH powerful is the multidimensional lens. It assesses climate risks to people in human development, not just physical hazards. We look at 3 time horizons across the 21st century, which is near term, starting from 2020 to 2039, mid-century, from 2040 to 2059, and the end of the century, which is 2080 in 2029. And there are 3 main emission pathways available: low, intermediate, and high emissions, roughly aligning with positive 1.8 degrees centigrade and plus 2.7 degrees centigrade or higher warming. Coverage is global, with over 24,000 subnational regions using standardized geographies and IPCC-aligned hazard data. The goal is to expand our understanding of how climate change could reshape human futures under different scenarios, and quantify potential cost, supporting mitigation arguments at local and global levels, and also give communities and policymakers real agency to shape better paths forward. It's empirically grounded and transparent with published methods and open data, so it's built for analysis and use. Moving on to the assessments themselves, HCH keeps expanding the spectrum of impact indicators we can explore, always linking hazards to real human outcomes. Previous release covered things like temperature-driven changes in mortality, labor, and productivity, also energy demands and sea level rise effects, such as population shares and expanded floodplains or land area below mean sea level. The new release, which was in November 2025, is what today's focus is on. This new release brings in projections for agricultural and or crop yields. It covers 6 staple crops, which is maize, rice, wheat, soy, cassava, and sorghum, across more than 100 countries and over 19,000 subnational regions. Time periods match the platform, which is near term, mid-century, and end of the century. In the emission pathways for the new release is RCP 4.5, which is moderate, and RCP 8.5, which is high. We've also taken the underlying climate impact lab work, which was published in Nature, and added value for policymakers, aggregating to national level with calorie and crop share weighting. This list is compare climate risks against the HDI, or Human Development Index, and adaptive capacity at the country level. The full method and findings are coming in the HDRO white paper that is set to be published soon. And with this, thank you all. I'll now pass on to my colleague Nick to present the next section. Thank you very much. Over to you, Nick.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much, Kiamuddin, and great to be here. Yeah, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Perfect. So yeah, just continuing on what Kiamuddin introduced here in terms of a deeper dive on the projected impacts to global staple crops in the agricultural sector, country to country. As he mentioned, where we looked at 6, and so this is again, this is expanding a published empirical sort of causal study that looked at future climate projections that was published in Nature back in June by colleagues from the Climate Impact Lab. And so we ingested those data and then combined them in this sort of human development lens. And as Tiamadine summarized, added some other more policymaker relevant top line summaries. And so we looked at maize, rice, wheat, soy, cassava, and sorghum. And their projections looked at over 100 countries to construct their projections at both the national and subnational levels. Kevin Nidani mentioned the sort of 3 different time horizons and emissions pathways. Yeah, and so I think this was already covered mostly. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you. Yeah, and so when we look country to country, this scatter plot that is grouped by HDI group. So the Human Development Index is computed from a 0 to 1 value, as has already been discussed, and then based on different categorical ranges of that value, we group countries in low, medium, high, and very high HDI classifications. And so this is just the colors for each of those groups showing on the y-axis, we have the projected change. And so more negative or kind of lower on the y-axis values indicates a higher decrease in projected yield or sort of worse impacts moving forward from climate change in the future. And each dot represents one country averaged across those 6 different staple crops, weighted by the relative share that each individual crop is planted or cultivated in that country. So we have a model that projects impacts to each crop for these different future periods, and then looking at what modern day or contemporary cropping patterns relative to each country and crop, we can construct this kind of weighted average projection. And so in a bar chart form, we can see that this is kind of the same thing, but for both the moderate and high emission scenarios. So again, we see the biggest impacts amongst low HDI groups, both at the medium and high emissions range, and then more impacts later on in the century. Next slide. And you can do a similar comparison in terms of OECD versus non-OECD countries. And so non-OECD countries tend to correlate as well as sort of being in the lower medium HDI groups. And again, we see higher projected magnitudes of declining staple crop yields for all scenarios, and then more so under high emissions at later in the century. So we can also look at one crop at a time. So these are maps at the subnational level. For those previous plots, we aggregated up to the national level, but here's an example of the spatial resolution that's available in these data. And this is just for maize. And you can see the heterogeneous projected impacts to maize across different global regions. And the masked areas that are just gray are places where maize is not currently planted right now. And so in many places, we see corn or maize yields by end of century under high emission scenarios declining by up to 40%. And this is especially pronounced in sort of the corn belt of North America, the US, the Middle East, Central Asia, and Southern Africa. And yes, and so then here is an example of those data. That last plot was a figure from the original Nature paper, and then now this is what those data look like on our Human Climate Horizons platform, which you could go on right now and scroll around and kind of hover over a region and choose the time horizon, the country, the emission scenario, and the crop, and you can see these projected impacts. So this is an example over Asia. Similarly, so this is just another example of soy masked for the cropped region of soybeans. We're seeing in the US declines by end of century of up to 50% in soybean yields. and about 20% in other regions such as Brazil. These are almost all temperature-driven impacts, I should say. They assess both temperature and precipitation, but these are primarily driven by temperature. And so this is another kind of country-level case study of soy, and you can see the kind of county by county differences in patterns. And so those counties that are projected to kind of have higher temperatures of extreme heat days are going to have the most impacts, especially in the Southwest. And yes, so for wheat, similar story. You can see some of the hotspots emerging, especially in South and Eastern Asia, and as well as many parts of North America. And so these maps do not necessarily reflect the proportion to which those crops are planted in each of these zones. But when we take the country level averages, we do account for that. So this just shows if wheat were planted in all the places where it's planted to some extent, this is what the impact would be. Yeah, and so again, another country case study. This is India and the Bangladesh area. And yes, and this is for wheat. And so we can see pretty intense impacts. Here are impacts to rice yields. And so you can see, like in much of North America, rice is not currently cultivated. And so it's not showing up there, but we see big impacts throughout Central Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa as well. And I should point out that there are some projected positive impacts. And for rice, that is the case in some parts of East Asia, like you can see in kind of Japan and northern China, Eastern Russia there. So it's going to be varied effects. So some of the cultivation conditions will improve with longer growing seasons, with increased temperatures and reduced cold days and things like that. But on net, the impacts look to be a net decline. This is for cassava, similar story. Go ahead and go next. And again, another site, this is now the user-facing interface that you all can explore these data on. Sorghum, again, very heterogeneous. All the blue there in kind of the boreal range of Europe and Russia are going to see extended growing season lengths, and so there's some benefits there. And so again, it's not a homogeneous story. Yeah, and then this is the U.S. case for wheat by end of century. Yeah, and I'll leave it there. But thanks so much. Happy to answer any questions in the chat.
Thank you so much, Kimon and Nick. I know some components of the presentation today are quite technical, so that's why we include the link in the chat. And you can also scan the QR code included in our presentations to access more detailed technical information on our website. I want to point out this Human Climate Horizon data platform is particularly intriguing because you can really play with the maps and to see how your regions, not only the country, but your regions and your cities are impacted by climate hazards. Then, as Nick mentioned, it's a joint collaboration with Climate Impact Lab. Then the research has been published on top journals like Nature. Another example was the research presented by Harry earlier on, using satellite image and machine data to calculate subregional HDI. That's a collaboration with University of Chicago and other academic institutions. So if you are a research institute, policy center, or individual expert who are interested in human development research and data and statistics, please reach out to us. We are open to collaboration. Next, we are going to have Manika to present our 2025 Global Multidimensional Poverty Index report is another example of collaboration with academia. This is a joint work between HDRO and Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative. Malika, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Yanchun. Let me just share my screen. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. My name is Navamallika Dhingia, and I work as a statistics specialist in HDRO. And in the next few minutes, I will share the analytical processes and some of the key findings from our latest Global Multidimensional Poverty Index report, which we published just in October of last year. Towards the end of the presentation, I'll also show how we have integrated this index data with some of the innovative data from the Human Climate Horizons platform that you just saw to illustrate how we can generate some important policy insights when we integrate these different types of data sources. Now, the Multidimensional Poverty Index, similar to our other human development indices that my colleague Yuchi took you through in the beginning, this index is also rooted in the understanding that human well-being and development goes beyond just monetary well-being, and poverty also goes beyond income and economic status of an individual, and it is a multidimensional experience. The index itself was first introduced in 2010, and since 2019, HDRO has been publishing annual reports, as Yanchun mentioned, in collaboration with Oxford University's Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative. At this point, it is also worth noting, because I know we have a lot of colleagues here today who work with national offices and national programs, that while this report presents the Global Multidimensional Poverty Index, many countries have or can develop their own national MPIs, which are calculated locally and tailored to country-specific priorities and context. And those, of course, play a very critical role in national policy and planning. This global MPI serves a complementary purpose using a common methodology across countries, wherein it allows us to get results that are comparable across regions and countries, so that we can identify global patterns with respect to poverty and also identify some shared challenges. So with that, we'll take a quick look at what this methodology is. What's the methodology that we use to estimate the global MPI? So the MPI captures deprivations across 3 dimensions: health, education, and standard of living. The conceptual understanding here is that people often experience multiple and overlapping deprivations at the same time. For example, a household may face poor nutrition while also lacking access to education or other basic services. And the MPI is designed to capture these overlapping disadvantages at the same time. So each of these 3 dimensions is measured using a specific set of indicators, as you can see on the image on the left. For health, we look at one indicator on nutrition and another one on child mortality. For education, we have an indicator on years of schooling and another indicator on school attendance. And for standard of living, we use 6 indicators on cooking fuel, sanitation, drinking water, electricity, housing, and assets. So altogether, the global MPI uses these 10 indicators to assess whether a household is multidimensionally poor or not. Now, we use nationally representative household survey data that include these 10 indicators to calculate the global MPI. We calculate a weighted score of deprivations for each household in the sample based on these 10 indicators. And if that score crosses a defined threshold of 1/3, the household is classified as being multidimensionally poor. And once the classifications are done at the household level, at the country level, we then summarize the information in 3 ways. First, we estimate the incidence of poverty, which is the proportion of people within a country that are multidimensionally poor. Second, we also calculate the intensity of poverty, which summarizes the number of deprivations that poor households experience on average. And the MPI value of a country is simply the product of this incidence and intensity, capturing both these important dimensions. And one other important point is that for many countries, we don't just have data from a single year. We have household surveys from multiple consecutive years. So in those cases, we also harmonize the surveys so that the indicators or the definitions stay consistent over time. And it allows us to produce MPI estimates that are comparable across years, and we are able to track the changes in multidimensional poverty over time for those relevant countries. Now, what does this look like in terms of the results? So in the 2025 latest global update, we assessed data from 109 countries. Across these countries, we found that about 1.1 billion people, that represents 18.3% of the total population living in these countries, are living in multidimensional poverty. Now, the chart here compares this multidimensional poverty prevalence with monetary poverty side by side. The green bars represents the proportion of population living in multidimensional poverty in those specific countries. The pink bars show the proportion living in severe multidimensional poverty, and the black dots or the black lines that you see, they represent the prevalence of monetary poverty measured using the World Bank poverty line definition. Now, what stands out here is that you can see in majority of the countries, monetary poverty rates are much lower than the multidimensional poverty rates, or the black dots and the lines are actually within the blue bars. So in other words, even when people are above the monetary poverty line, they may still be deprived in essential aspects of life, whether it's health or education or standard of living. So this really goes to show the value of multidimensional poverty as an important complementary measure for monetary poverty, and the need that's there to look at both of these measures if we truly want to address poverty reduction. Now, if we dig a bit deeper, the global MPI estimates, they also help us understand where multidimensional poverty is most concentrated across the world and who is most affected. We found that Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia together account for around 83% of the world's multidimensionally poor. We also found that nearly 2/3 of the poor people in the world live in middle-income countries, which challenges the idea that poverty is only a low-income country issue. Also looking at the indicators, the 10 indicators that constitute MPI, this index also helps us to see what people are actually deprived in. Among those that are living in multidimensional poverty, we found that the most widespread deprivations are in basic living conditions. It's clean cooking fuel, adequate housing, and sanitation. At the same time, nutrition also appears to be a critical concern. Around 635 million multidimensionally poor people live in households where at least one person is undernourished. And these results demonstrate one of the core design features of the MPI, as I mentioned before, which is its ability to decompose poverty by the specific indicators, which can further help us to link poverty measurement directly to sector-specific policy interventions. Now, so far, we focused on just the status of multidimensional poverty globally. In this year's report, as previously my colleague had also mentioned, we also asked one additional question regarding the overlap of this multidimensional poverty with one of the other very important contemporary issues of our times, which is climate hazards. And I'll briefly, again, take you through the analytical processes and some of the key findings from that piece of work from our report. So it is well established from current literature that poverty is closely linked with the climate crisis. Climate hazards can affect people's livelihoods, their health outcomes, and as these hazards grow in intensity and frequency, examining how they intersect with poverty, it's not just essential, but also urgent. So with that context, the 2025 Global MPI report, for the first time, it brought together data on climate hazards and MPI. We tried to assess how many poor people in the world live with the added burden of climate hazards, and which geographies are these poor people concentrated in. So we focused on four specific hazards: high heat, drought, flood, and air pollution. We overlaid publicly available climate hazard data from remote sensing sources with the MPI data. For this analysis, we used MPI prevalence data that was calculated at the subnational level for all of the 108 countries that were included in this analysis. And this allowed us a level of granularity that goes beyond the national estimates. So what we found was that an overwhelming majority of poor people, around 80%, live in regions that are exposed to at least one of the four climate hazards that we assessed. This 80% represents 887 million poor people across the 108 MPI countries. And when we break it down by the type of hazards, we saw that the largest number of poor people are exposed to high heat, which covers 608 million poor people. This is followed by air pollution, which claims 577 million poor people. Now, as we look beyond those global totals, we observe some interesting trends in that we find that there is significant heterogeneity across geographies in how poverty and climate hazards overlap. These maps here illustrate this heterogeneity very clearly. Each map presents the number of poor people who are exposed to all four climate hazards. The shades of pink and maroon represent the regions that are exposed to the climate hazards, and the blue shades represent areas that are not exposed to the climate hazards. So as we move from lighter to darker shades of red, we move from a low to high number of poor people living with the specific climate hazard exposure. So as you can see from the charts, for high heat, which is the first map, much of West Africa has a strong concentration of poor population living with that added burden of high heat. Similarly, large parts of South Asia also experience this acute combination of poverty with exposure to high heat, as well as floods and air pollution. Many other subnational regions of the world in East Asia and Latin America also show significant overlaps, which really drove home the fact that this is a global challenge, and it's not one that is confined just to a few regions in the world. Now, just to further emphasize on heterogeneity, this chart here shows the number of poor people that are exposed to different number of hazards concurrently. As you can see, South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, the first two bars in the chart, they have the highest shares of poor people living in exposure to at least two or more climate hazards at the same time. In South Asia, in fact, over 90% of the total poor, multidimensionally poor people in the region are exposed to at least two or more climate hazards at the same time. Now, beyond regional patterns, we also saw some important differences when we examined this exposure through the lens of country income groups. We saw that lower middle income countries bear the heaviest burden, as you can see from the chart on the left. Lower middle income countries account for the largest share of poor people that are exposed to at least one climate hazard. And in terms of the different types of hazard, we saw that high heat, air pollution, and floods were the ones that were driving the numbers up. Okay, now our findings till now described today's challenges. Another interesting question that we wanted to ask was also what lies ahead, and how might climate risks evolve over time, and what does it mean for the multidimensionally poor people of today. So to answer that, we used future climate projection data from the Human Climate Horizons platform that my colleagues Kiamuddin and Nicholas just presented. As you saw from Kiamuddin's presentation, the Human Climate Horizons, among many other climate-related data, also presents projection data on temperature rise at different levels of granularity for two future time periods. One is mid-century, which is 2040 to 2059, and the other is end of century, or 2080 to 2099. So we integrated that future projection data from Human Climate Horizons with MPI data at the country level. So countries were first grouped from lowest to highest MPI levels, as you can see in this chart. The bars here show the additional number of high heat days that these groups of countries are projected to experience by mid-century and the end of century time period. The lighter shades reflect the projected number of extra high heat days in a moderate emissions pathway, and the darker shades show the projected values for a high emissions pathway. And what we see is a very clear gradient. Countries with higher levels of poverty are expected to face greater increases in the number of very hot days each year, up to 92 days in a high emission scenario. And when we juxtapose that with what is projected for the countries with lowest poverty levels, we find that the countries with the least MPI values are projected to experience an additional 62 days of high heat per year by the end of the century. While this 62 it's still a substantial increase, but evidently much lower than what is projected to be seen for the highest MPI countries. So this is a good demonstration of how using innovative data, projections data alongside the MPI data allowed us to take a more forward-looking view of how extreme heat or climate change may increasingly overlap with multidimensional poverty. So let me close with just three broad takeaways. First is that the MPI gives us a multidimensional lens on poverty. By looking at deprivations across health, education, and living standards, it allows us to track poverty in a way that is reflective of people's lived experiences and not just their economic deprivations and income. Second, by integrating subnational MPI data with globally comparable climate hazards data in this report, we were able to generate timely and policy relevant insights. The analysis showed that the double burden on people and the planet is real, and it is increasingly hard to ignore, often involving multiple hazards at the same time. And finally, by combining MPI with the Human Climate Horizons projections, we were able to look ahead and identify where these overlapping risks are likely to intensify over time, and where early or targeted action will matter the most. So with that, I will now hand it over to Yanchun. Thank you very much, colleagues. We welcome you to explore more about this index and the latest report using this QR code here. Thank you. Over to you, Yanchun.
Thank you very much, Manika. This 2025 Global MPI report, as you can see, really try to combine the ongoing research from the office. So we are using the data from Human Climate Horizon, which was the third presentation today. This is how we see our research and stats and data work can be integrated, in particular with the support of the academic community. So now we are coming to the end of today's event. We have answered a dozen questions in Q&A. Thank you very much for your very active engagement. If you have additional questions, please reach out to us. Before I close today's event, I'd like to share two information. One is we have received a couple of requests for today's presentations. So I will just paste the event page in the chat right now. So by the end of day, today, New York time, we will make all the presentations during the session today available on the events website. So you will be able to access all the 4 presentations we are just presenting to you today. The second information is about our 2026 Human Development Report. We already have audience asking us what is the theme. So I paste the link of this a thematic topic announcement on our website. So our 2026 Human Development Report will look at how we can rebuild the relationship between nature and human. So we are exploring aspirational approach to nature and human together. So please stay tuned. We are going to share more information about this upcoming report. And also, if you are NSOs, please stay tuned for our NSO letters to be sent to you very soon. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you in the future sessions. Then if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.